Hey, before we get into today's episode, if you're a podcast host or guest, listen up. I've produced over 200 podcast episodes and guested on 50 podcasts just in 2025 alone. And let me tell you, nothing grows your audience or builds trust faster than being in front of the right listeners. That's why I created my podcast tour offer. I'll help you map out your topics, strategize your message, and find you the most aligned podcasts and audiences to get you and your business in front of. So if you've ever thought, I just wish more eyes were on my work, this is your sign. Let's get you on a podcast tour. You can find all the details in the show notes. Just look for podcast tour. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back. Today is a special episode. I have Nora Virginia here. I'm super excited. This is such a treat. She hosts the Glow Up to Blow Up podcast. It is in the top 2.5% of podcasts. So buckle up, get your pen and pencil out, stop what you're doing and tune into this one. She's a business and identity coach, breathwork facilitator, podcaster, and she has built a multiple six-figure business organically with under 2,000 followers. And I think that's something that all of us mompreneurs, entrepreneurs, people in the online space want. We can kind of see it happening, but sometimes we struggle to get there. And I love that we're going to dive into talking about that today and becoming that version of self that has the reality that we can actually see and we desire, but we're not there yet. So welcome to the show. And why don't you start with just a little bit more about what you do and who you help?
Thank you. Yeah, it's so good to be here. So I'm Nora. As Candace mentioned, I'm a business and identity coach where I feel like business is a little bit more straightforward, but I'll sort of hit on the identity and then I can dig into, different parts of my story. But to give everyone context listening, I started my business probably about 6 years ago. And previously I worked in finance. I got my CPA. I did public accounting. I was just on that path. Truly hated the work piece of it, if I'm being honest, since day one. Just much like other people. I think I had a mentee be right around 2020, during COVID. I was like, okay, I'm working from home and I'm still not happy. One day I had a download listening to a podcast of I'm supposed to do this spiritual coaching certification. And I sort of just did it for myself in the beginning because, when you're not happy in your career, it can just affect different areas of my life. And I felt that. And I really just wanted to work on myself. And the whole point of the coaching certification really comes full circle was helping you become the version of self that has the dream life and the vision that you have, knowing that makes everything else easier. So anyways, got that coaching certification and grew my business. The first couple years, I wasn't necessarily oh, it's just, 0 to 6 figures like you see online. I definitely had my couple years in the beginning where I didn't know what I was doing, really throwing spaghetti at the wall. And then now here I am. But I have taught really heavy strategy in the past to early stage business owners. And now a huge part of what I do is the identity piece that I mentioned. So identity is the biggest driver of human behavior and action and influences a lot of what we learn from a sales standpoint and a messaging standpoint. It's okay, you can learn the perfect script, but if you don't believe in your work, if you're not convicted, if you're not passionate about it, people can feel that. Or you can have a list of here's all the podcasts to go pitch, but you won't do it if you have all of the fears coming up, right? So my coaching really and my specialty starts with the identity and who you're being. And after we take care of that, then the strategy and the action makes it so much easier.
I can really relate to a lot of that. I was a teacher for 13 years and I've been out of the classroom now for 4. I started my business before I left, but I would say those first year and a half, just anybody that asks what do you do? I'd say, oh, I used to be a teacher because that identity was so deep. And it was I couldn't let go of that and stepping into those new shoes. That new version of me was a really, really pivotal moment. I'm excited to talk more about this. Diving right in then. I think a lot of us can visualize, we can see that next step, but sometimes it's hard to get there. Why is it that we can see that higher self, that future, but we struggle to become her?
That a big thing is a lot of people actually stop there of they do the visualization where they can see their future self, but then it sort of ends there. And I think that that's a problem with a lot of this work. Really how your identity works is your identity is just how you see yourself. So what actually influences your identity is your thoughts, your emotions, your action, that sort of thing. So when you can have practices and tools off the meditation mat that you can sort of practice to actually change your thoughts, change how you feel, change the action that you take, then your brain says Candace is starting to think different. She's now that girl. now she's starting to feel different. Like she's actually that girl. So I'm really passionate about not just giving the fluff of like, go be her, because I think that that's so hard for people to do tangibly. So I really believe in like building in these micro practices of like, okay, how do you actually, which we can talk about today, how do you actually shift a limiting belief? What are tools that you can use for that? Is there a way that we can use our emotions as information of this is what it's trying to tell me, and now this is the emotion that I want to feel, and how can I plug into that? Knowing that when our thoughts and our emotions shift and we start to act different, then our brain literally sees us in a different way. It's so crazy because identity is not who you are, it's who you think you are. It's just your self-concept at the end of the day, and it's like ever changing. But I think that that's like the biggest sticking point for a lot of people that are passionate about the visualizations, but then have a hard time actually embodying her.
That makes complete sense. I have done different things where like, what would she do? And it might be so small as like, she would go support that local female-owned coffee shop and buy the $8 mocha because she wants that today, you know, without thinking. Is that kind of what you're getting out of like those micro things? Or tell me more about that. Can you elaborate on?
Yeah, but let's just stick with that example because yes, sometimes, right? But I think that sometimes people, specifically with the money stuff, and I think that this is just how it's taught in the coaching space, is like, okay, well, the future version of you would invest $10,000 into the mastermind, or, you know, the version of you would buy the cup of coffee every day, or whatever the case may be. And yes, sometimes she would, but I think it's actually more helpful to ask, like, who is the version of her that built it? Because the reality is that like when she was in the building stage, she probably wasn't buying the designer bag. She was probably being like using her money in a little bit of a different way, right? Now she is. But how did she actually build it? So like on the latte topic, yeah, of course, right? Because that version of you probably is not like feeling guilt for the spending. But I also think it's like, well, the wealthy version of you, did she get there by spending on things just because, or did she get there because she was like feeling like it was like an even energetic exchange? But to kind of like go back and answer your original question, it is the tiny moments. But the thing that I would ask the listeners back is, are you playing that game all day long or is it randomly? Because this isn't just like, you know, necessarily a one-time thing, and your identity happens in the hard moment. So it is really like a repetition game of how I want people to start to think about this is almost like your future self or your higher self is almost like your business advisor or, you know, consulting you all day. And this is in the little moments. It's like when your alarm goes off in the morning and you're like, oh, I really want to sleep in. But you know that like that future version of you gets up and like does her meditation and starts her day, right? It's that moment. It's when you hear no from a potential client and that version of you wants to decrease her pricing and lay in her bed, stomp her feet. This is never going to work for me, right? No, that future version of you actually knows that maybe your pricing is just not high enough and that client was not aligned and lets it roll off her back. It happens when you write the podcast pitch, as I'm sure you talk to a lot of people about, and you don't want to send it. And instead of rolling it to your to-do list the next day and the next day and the next day, you actually hit send, even with the fear within you, because you know that version of you knows that she's changing lives on podcasts. So I think sometimes we do it like around a couple like big decisions in our day, but our identity is made in the small moments, but also the hard moments when you want to go back to that current version of self. Because if everyone were to look at their reality right now, it's like your current reality was created by a past version of you. There's like this time lag ultimately where your past thoughts, emotions, and actions created the reality that you have right now. And your current identity is comfortable, which your brain is always going to want to cling to. Well, this is how you felt in the past, and this is what was true for you in the past, and this is how you showed up in the past, because our brain and our body are wired for safety. But when you can look at those two and then just choose like, well, what is the operating system that's going to lead to the results? And day after day, moment after moment, choose that different operating system, your results do change. It's sort of like the analogy that I want to give is if you were trying to build your booty at the gym, you wouldn't just visualize building your booty and then like work out once every 2 weeks or do like 3 squats a day in order to do that, right? You would have practices that you do every single day to build your booty. So it's like same sort of concept. We're building your mindset. We're building your emotional resilience. So are there micro tools and practices that we can plug into daily?
That'd be a great place to go next. If you want to give a tool that someone could use today.
I'll give you like a couple different, maybe one on like the mindset thing that's easy and quick, and then one on, emotional embodiment. But for a mindset thing, it can be as simple as like, I call this notice, disrupt, redirect. So NDR. And so simple, but all it comes down to is you notice the thought, you disrupt it by saying a phrase that you continuously come back to, and then you redirect it to what you want to believe instead. The first question that people always have is like, how do I notice if I'm like believing a limiting belief or if there's a limiting belief? And my answer is always one, because it feels like shit to believe it. So we all have those moments in our days where we're like, wait a second, I was like fine. And now all of a sudden I'm like in a funk. And why was that? And it's like, well, what were you just thinking about? What were you just playing out in your mind? That's one way. The second way is our language actually articulates our belief system. So you can just hear yourself say, I can't afford that, right? Now we know that you have a belief that you don't have enough money. There's plenty of other ways that we can say that. This is not how I'm prioritizing my money right now. Or instead of, I'm never going to make money in my business, I'm in the process of making money in my business. Language is a really good way to look at your thoughts. So once you notice the thought, you want to disrupt it. What I usually say for myself, to give an example, is I say Control Alt Delete. Anytime I'm like thinking about something that I don't want to be true, I say Control Alt Delete. It's like I want to erase it. And then that's my point where I get to redirect to what is the better feeling thought or belief. So for example, it might be like, if your thought is I'm not making enough money in my business yet, I can't afford that. You notice that, you disrupt it, Control Alt Delete. I don't want that to be true. I'm in the process of making money in my business. What do I need to believe about myself to start making money in my business? Like redirecting it back to possibility and back to what you want to be true. Now, I want to like caveat this because I also teach breathwork, which, is a way to go way deeper into your subconscious. Sometimes beliefs are tied to core memories that need to be healed and revisited and looked at and that sort of thing. So sometimes the work, it's like, okay, if you have a really strong belief and that's like not working, I do like to take clients deeper to sort of like look at some of the memories that it's tied to and do some inner child healing around it. That's just sort of like a fun, easy on the go tool for the mindset. And then, emotional, shifting your emotions can be, I'm going to say just as simple. Some people might not agree. But when you realize every single emotion is for you and it's a guide and it's a gift, and then also understand how to plug into a new frequency, it can be. So for example, if you are feeling anger, if you were to even just like chat GPT right now, like what is anger trying to tell us? It's usually like something around your boundaries were crossed and your boundaries were pushed. So that's saying like, okay, we need to reset those boundaries and those expectations. Then, okay, well, I want to feel peace instead. It's like, if you decide peace gets to be my frequency, then you might want to say, like, when you wake up in the morning, it's like, okay, what would the most peaceful version of me do right now? Maybe she would skip her workout and go get a coffee and just like look up at the sun and feel the sun on her skin. Or, maybe when her husband does something that bothers her lately, if I'm choosing peace today, maybe I actually recognize that that's actually not the fight I want to have today. And instead, I'm going to, let this one go and put it off and see if I'm still mad about it like the next day or something like that. Maybe a client goes to me in the DMs, and instead of like dissecting the conversation and venting to every single person about it, I'm going to be like bless and release. And that's me actually choosing peace. So I think that would be like the emotional hack that I would give as well.
I like both those things. It's like about noticing. And I think we kind of are conditioned, especially as moms, like take care of everybody else. Or even if you're just a woman, because you're such a caregiver, and usually take care of everybody else, not notice yourself. I know when I had my 3 kids back to back to back, I really came out of that like cloud eventually when they became a little more independent, and thought like, whoa, who am I? And I haven't considered myself and I haven't checked in with myself. So if you're in a space like that, I just want to say like one thing that helped me was notice those thoughts, notice the emotions, let them come. They pass so much faster if you just let them instead of fighting against them, but also notice them with like grace and not this judgmental, like, oh, this is a bad emotion or this is a good emotion or I don't want this. Having a little bit of just detachment from it, maybe, or I don't know, that's probably not the right word. You can explain more, but like more of a noticing and using it as information.
Attaching to it. Like, that's the thing that I share with a lot of my clients is especially if you're someone that's into like personal growth, it can be really easy to go down a healing rabbit hole. And every single limiting belief you have starts to become this huge deal. Why am I not over this yet? Where did this start? Oh my God, right? And we're energizing that theme when we're so attached to it. So it's like similar to what you would learn in a meditation class. Can you treat it as a cloud? Let it pass by. Interesting thought. I didn't know that was still like a lot within me, but not make it be your entire personality and identity. Because the other thing that I'm really passionate about sharing with people is no one is perfectly healed and positive and optimistic all the time. And I think that there's a lot of power in recognizing that, especially with social media and sort of validating as well of like, okay, I can recognize that I had that belief. Of course, I'm human. Yeah, I'm going to doubt myself sometimes. It's not that big of a deal. Let's move on. It's like, let's redirect it and let's move on, but we don't have to be so hard on ourselves. And I see this a lot frequently, especially. And I think it's because there's like this illusion online with online businesses that like there's certain people that are just perfectly confident and like they have the best mindset and they don't ever have bad days. And it's just not true. So half the time when my client is like, I'm like, feeling this way and blah, blah, I'm like, yeah, because it's the first time you've done it. Duh. I would be scared if you didn't have any sort of fear coming up.
Right. So I'm curious next what your take on goals are, especially like if you are a personal development, like on this healing journey. Sometimes you also are high achieving and you like to set goals. Wondering people that are great at setting goals, but terrible about believing that they are the person that achieves that. What's your take?
I think that goal setting, I'll say a couple things on this. This is a good question. Could be helpful, but what I always am a big fan of is not just setting external goals, but let's talk about the internal input. So for example, I'm going to come back to the podcast example a lot since chatting with you. But if you had a goal to be on 50 podcasts this year, that's great. But let's not worry necessarily about hitting that goal. Let's instead ask, in order to be on 50 podcasts, what actions do I have to take every single day? So I have to update my bio. Cool. Check it off. I have to, research other podcasts that might fit my criteria. Check it off. I have to pitch X amount of people, knowing that I'll get some no's from people. Okay, check that off. We have so much more control over the inputs, not the outputs. And sometimes we focus on the output and then we don't hit it by our made up due date. And then we like throw in the towel and we give up. But it's so much better when you can look at like, what do I have to do to make that goal happen and make that your goal to actually hit those things is one of the best things that you can do. That's sort of my first piece on it. That's why I think that external goals are helpful because they provide that directional input when you do it. The other thing as well is really just tuning into how you imagine that you'll feel when you accomplish that goal, I think is the most underrated thing that anyone could be doing. Because sometimes we hit these goals, we hate the journey, and then we say, why don't I feel the way that I wanted to feel? And that's why the emotional embodiment that I just talked about, I think is so important. Because if you're someone that's like, okay, when I get on 50 podcasts or when I hit my first 6 figures, I'm going to feel accomplished and confident. It's like, how can you feel accomplished every single day? I want you to feel the same level of accomplished when you pitch yourself as you do when you actually get on a podcast. How can you feel confident every single day? Is there mantras that you say in the morning? Maybe you hop off a client call and instead of beating yourself up about how bad you did on that call, you point out 3 things that went really well on the call. So really starting to bake that in. And even just from a manifestation standpoint, which I teach too, it's like if you're in the frequency of like, I'm an accomplished person, I believe in myself, like inevitably you are going to be attracting things, results, all of that, outcomes that are of that like frequency as well.
Manifestation gets a bad rap, I feel like, and people think it's just like magical woo, but it's literally our brain will look for more of what you're thinking about and it will prove you right. I think it's pretty cool that we have that choice then. Like I can be crabby, I can be negative, my brain will prove me right. But then I also have the exact same choice that's just as easy to make, to think something else and go find evidence of that.
Yeah. It's almost like when you tell yourself that you want a new black Jeep Wrangler and then you start seeing them everywhere. They were always there. It's just that it wasn't in your awareness. I was just talking to my client about this because she works at like a big skincare and makeup company that I never really put that much thought into. And now that I'm working with her, I'm like, I see it everywhere. Target, Sephora, it was always there. I just never focused on the brand itself. So that's because that part of my brain, my reticular activating system, is literally acting as a filter for what passes through the conscious mind. So yes, when you're like, okay, I'm accomplished today, I'm a badass, all your brain is going to look for is reasons why Candace is amazing, reasons why Nora is a badass. Like that. Otherwise, if your story is, I'm a failure, guess what? All you're going to notice in your days is where you dropped the ball, essentially. So it is really powerful. And to your point, I think that sometimes we think like manifestation is separate from like strategy or whatever. I know I thought that in the beginning of like it's manifestation versus business strategy. And how I see it now is it's all the same process. It's sort of like this funnel approach because your identity feeds your thoughts feed your emotions, which in turn influence your strategy. So it's all part of actually the same funnel. It's like strategy is just, a plan that's an action plan that's meant to get you to your goals at the end of the day. It's included in the quote unquote manifestation process as well.
Yeah, I like that distinction. That makes so much more sense. Another thing I was thinking while you're talking about like how much your words matter and that we were bringing up podcasting, like being on a podcast tour, that's one ripple effect I didn't see. So I was on 50 shows last year and I didn't set out with the goal, but I set out to be my best client and just go put myself on a podcast tour. And so I did the actions and I did those things that would allow me chances to be on podcasts. And then it just like rippled and then it happened. But I didn't realize that having to repeat my story and like my expertise and share what I do over and over and over helped me believe it more, help me be that next person. So I think that's something that speaking on podcasts, starting your own podcast, like forcing those repetitions to use your words to speak about, your business, what you do now, that was crazy powerful.
Yeah, I believe it. And now also just with the nature of the work that you do, like you're probably so much more confident and convicted around selling your offer in your work because you are your own testimonial at the end of the day. Had you had not done that, it could have been like, does this fully work? And can people do this? Right. And now you're like, no, I know because I've done it too. So it's like similar to what I said at some point, it's like you showing up in that way so repetitively created this new identity probably for you of like,
yep,
I'm a queen with podcast guesting. Like you're your niche now.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, what do you think the difference is between two people? One, they both do all the things in their business, right? They check all those boxes. That's the strategy. Mm-hmm. But the difference of that, the person that also does the identity work, like what's going to happen and what are the outcomes with those two types of people? Why is it so important?
An example that I love to give on this is energy can be felt through the phone, especially now. I think that 5 years ago on social media, it was easier to slap up text and like grow a following and get clients. It was just a different market in 2019, 2020 in the online space. Now people really, really, really need to ultimately feel the energy behind the theme. So to give you an example outside of business, and then we'll circle back to that, it's sort of the difference between like, someone asking how you're doing and you saying like, oh, I'm good, I'm fine. And then like you being like, I'm fine, right? It's like the same exact words, but like the energy and the feeling behind all of that is so different of like, I'm fine to like, I'm fine. Right? Like people know, something's beneath the surface. And it's the same thing with selling, for example. I could hop on my stories right now and be like, I'm selling this offer called Convicted. It's like a 10-week one-on-one micro program. I'm so excited to combine energy and strategy and help you become more convicted online. That's why people are buying from you. That sort of energy of just really talking about how it's changed my life, how it's changed my client's life. And then the difference between the person that only does the strategy work is they will hop on and maybe talk and be like, okay, last day for this offer, or slap up some story slides that like outline some selling points that people are going to skip over. It's just so different. When people start to realize this too, it's like, look at the business owners that you enjoy following and you want to buy from. You don't want to buy from them just because of the words that they're saying. You want to buy from them because you are like bought into whatever magical dust they have in their aura that like makes them excited and high on life and obsessed with their offer and their clients. And like that is the energy that people are feeling when they buy. And now I think it's more important than ever because I taught really heavy strategy for a long time. And why I sort of pivoted over the past year and a half was because that was the biggest thing that I was seeing is I'm like, people have everything that they need to create a multiple six-figure business right now, and they're not doing the things. Or if they're doing the things, they're not bringing the energy that they need to be doing in order to get clients.
That makes perfect sense to me because that's why I also have a couple videos like saved on my phone that are on days where I'm high energy. Because do you do human design at all? Do you know yours?
Well, I know. Yeah, I'm a projector.
So am I. So my energy really ebbs and flows, right? So I sometimes want to be a hermit and hide behind the scenes. But when you're growing an online business, obviously you need to be visible. So I'll save a few videos that I did on days where like I am high energy, and I'll do a couple just so I have that in my back pocket so I don't feel that pressure. Like some days I'm not in the right energy to share, but I want to make sure that I am doing the things and showing up. But yeah, that energy behind it makes a huge difference.
And it's almost like even outside of how other people view us on it, because I'm the same. I'm like, my energy definitely ebbs and flows. And I feel like it almost like fuels your belief as well, right? Like when you're in that energy where you're really like convicted and feeling yourself, it's like everyone's going to sign up for my offer. And then on the days where you have no energy and you show up, you're like, that was horrible. No one's going to sign up. Like it actually influences how you show up as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, those days I can like record 4 solo podcast episodes because you're just like firing. And then on other days, it's kind of just also like learning yourself and honoring those times, but also not using it as a crutch or like an excuse of, oh, I can't do this because I'm a projector and I'm made for behind the scenes.
It goes back to like the version of you that built it. She didn't show up when she was low energy. She figured it out. So
exactly. And I feel like we have so much proof if like we look back in our past, because there's a reason like we're still alive. We're still here. We've literally figured everything out. Like you can look back and find all that proof if you need it. Like I got through college basketball. It was intense. It's such a high level, all these different things in your life. And so, you don't think about it now as however old you are, but that all was you. And so, I mean, you can just take that as proof too, that you can do this too. You got through everything else.
Having babies.
How hard can it be if you've already done that?
Right. Like my labor, I think about this often, like my labor actually is just not my favorite. It was very uncomfortable for me is what I'll say. And giving up wasn't an option, right? Like it's not an option. You're having the baby. But oftentimes things get hard in our business and it's like, well, we do have the option of quitting. We do have the option of sitting back. But if you didn't, you would get through it. But I loved what you said because I think that sometimes people have trouble finding evidence of like, well, I haven't been successful yet. So how do I actually find evidence that I'm going to be successful? And exactly what you just said, it's like we can go back through our history and pull from these past experiences that show us, yeah, maybe it wasn't in the business because we're still building the business, but in these different areas of life, we have stories of we didn't think it would work out. We didn't think we could do it and we still did it type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, as we wrap this up, because there's so many good things and actionable things that people can take away, what is the easiest or 1 or 2 ways to shift your self-concept in how you view yourself?
The one I'm going to give people is like creating an alter ego. Why I love like the whole alter ego, you can call it an avatar thing, is because it's sort of a way to anchor in everything that we're talking about. It works because when you think about, for example, actors that have to get into role for their movies, they get into roles so good that like some of them drive themselves crazy. Like they become their character and it works for that reason. Like pretending to be, sometimes people are like, fake it. You can't fake it until you make it. And I'm like, no, you can, right? Because that's identity work. Anyways, I would come up with like an alter ego name. Mine is always Nova or always has been, or sometimes it would be like Nora 2.0 or Nora 5.0. Take some time and like journal on like, who is she? And also just give her a role as well in your business. So for example, Nova shows up and sells even if she's low energy. She doesn't use that as a cop out, right? So having that like identity or alter ego established for yourself and then having an anchor that you use to drop into her. So maybe it's like, okay, before a sales call, you put on your fragrance that you love and that's when you like snap into that energy, or you put on a song that you love or a lip gloss or whatever. This works. You will feel yourself shift. You'll feel yourself show up different. It's crazy. And my last piece of advice with that is like enter through the body, not just the mind. There's been science on this as well, is that when you shift your body language, it actually shifts your brain and your thoughts and how you show up, similar to like power posing or like mirror work, same sort of thing. So, okay, if I'm tapping into Nova, who crushes it on sales calls, like she probably is showing up like open and she has her shoulders drops and she asks a lot of questions and she's excited and about her work and she's very neutral and unattached, right? So I can use that to sort of like turn into that identity with the body as well. And then it's just have her be your advisor, your consultant. What would she do? And the hardest part is you already know the answers to all the questions that I gave you. The hardest part is just choosing it. And it is uncomfortable. Like you mentioned at some point something about like your postpartum experience. I had a tough postpartum experience as well. And really, it was like the biggest identity crisis of my life in ways that I could have never imagined. And this work isn't always glamorous, visualized, show up as her. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and it really is choosing it when it's hard, is what I will say. So that's like an exercise that people can play with as well.
I love that. And I like the body part too. You kind of forget that part. My line is chin up, shoulders back, stomach grounded. I feel everything in my stomach. So that's for the nerves. That's for the anxiety, like everything. So those are my.
I love that.
Tell me about your podcast and where people can find you.
So my podcast is called Glow Up to Blow Up, and it is a personal growth and entrepreneurial podcast. We talk a lot about some of the themes that we've talked about today. I love it because I give you have actions and takeaways and like exercises with every single episode, which I'm really proud of over there. So that's on Spotify, Apple, anywhere where you listen to podcasts really. And then I am on TikTok and Instagram, but I'm most on Instagram, and my handle is at I am Nora and then Virginia, like the state.
I will link everything in the show notes, and I just appreciate this whole talk and you being here today. So thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Hey, before you go, if you've ever wished podcast guesting or hosting felt a little easier, you're going to love this. I started a free podcast matchmaking community where hosts and guests can actually connect, swap shows, and find aligned conversations without all the cold pitching and chaos. It's totally free, it's super fun, and it's growing every day. So whether you're looking to grow your audience, get in front of the right people, or just finally get your message out there, come join us. You can find the link in the show notes to join the community.